Hey guys, welcome back to the wood shop. So today we're going to be making a coffee table. So this spring, my wife and I, and also my father, we slabbed a tree. This is a sweet gum tree, and we have a whole bunch of slabs, and this is just a remaining portion of one of them, and we've been setting it aside for a special project. Well, the day has finally come for us to come up with a plan on how we're going to use this. This is a 3-inch thick slab by about 20 inches. So what we're going to do is make our shoe rack about 16 inches. We're going to be cutting off the back end, squaring it up because this is going to sit against the wall. Actually, we're going to cut this side off. And then it'll leave this open edge. We're going to try and preserve the bark, but if it doesn't end up working out, we'll remove the bark and put a nice finish on it. The legs and the shoe racks are going to be made out of oak and possibly some cherry. We've got some ambrosia cherry we're going to be throwing in there too. So go ahead, stay tuned and watch the process. So we got the slab sanded with the drum sander. That's an 18-inch drum sander. It's an open-end drum sander, so you can do up to 36 inches. But this is around 17 inches wide, maybe just under 18. So we only had to do one pass on each end with it. Overall, really satisfied. There's a couple low spots, like right here where the chainsaw teeth went in, and right here, that's just a little nick. I'll hit those with the hand sander before we assemble, but overall we're really satisfied with how the sander worked. That's the first time I've put something so wide through it. It looks great. Now it's time to process the oak. The oak is rough cut right here, and we've got a few stacks. There's this one, and then over here there's this stack right here. Those are going to be for the legs and also the trays for the shoes to sit.
All right, so first I want to point something out. If you've been listening to the audio, you may have caught me saying shoe rack. Well, there's an interesting story behind that. My wife and I originally came up with the idea of making a shoe rack, but after we saw the finished product, we decided that this would be a coffee table in our living room, which could double as a bench because of the rigidity of it. So we ended up making it a coffee table, not a shoe rack. But I guess it could work as either. What do you guys think? Coffee table or shoe rack? Leave your comments down below. Thanks. So like many other people who are woodshop hobbyists, you may have the same issue I have, which is square footage. So we have to come up with creative ways to make things work safely, efficiently, and in a cost-effective way. Am I right? So this is one of the favorite parts of my shop design, which was the vacuum tower, as I call it, which has 3 different blast gates on it. I've modified it since this video, but I've got a blast gate for this planer, this DeWalt planer, which is on a wheel cart base, which I made custom for this, so I can move it underneath my storage shelf, and as you can see, I can just tuck this cable in, take the dust vacuum off, and close that blast gate, and just nice and easily have a workspace right on top of my table saw. So I've got this nice table for my outfeed table, and I really enjoy that part. We have to be creative when we're on a budget, and also when we are limited to a certain square footage. So anyways, after processing the oak on the jointer and the planer, now it's time to square up that edge with the table saw. And as you can see, I've chosen a width on these boards. And the assembly process, I didn't quite get every step in the assembly process, but I was able to get enough to show you some important steps that I took in making this coffee table. So I do have a parts list in front of me there on that slip, and I'm just squaring up all of these oak boards and also cutting some rough dimensions. Believe right now I'm going to be cutting some legs, some boards that I'll be using as my legs, and I'll be stacking them up just in front there, squaring up each piece as I go, removing the spoils so that way I don't have any kickback. I've got this simple solution to a stop. As you just saw me use it, it's a clamp and a board. I've been meaning to upgrade my crosscut sled, and I also have a couple other sleds that I'd like to upgrade with some T-track. Do you guys have any recommendations as far as sled videos that would be good that I can either build or possibly look at purchasing? I'm open to any options right now. So now that I've got all of my lumber cut, I'm going to go ahead and tape all my leg pieces together. Up until a couple months ago, actually, I didn't think we needed a bandsaw. But I started doing some research and seeing all of the creative ways that you can use a bandsaw and how it saves time when you're making parts, and also just, cutting rough lumber, and just how safe it is to use. It pulls the material down rather than pushes it back towards you. And was thoroughly convinced that we should get a bandsaw. So we jumped into the investment, and you'll actually see that video. We've got an unboxing of our 17-inch Grizzly 35th anniversary bandsaw. And it's been such a fun tool to use. But as you can see here, I've got all my legs taped together. Went ahead and put a 1-inch mark on either end of that. And I came up with this idea to use a piece of thin lumber, and had my wife help me there. We're going to just mark the bow that we want on our legs. And this way we have a template for all 4 of our pieces. So now we can just use our bandsaw and just safely run it through one time and get all 4 pieces cut. And while they're still taped together, bring it over to the sander and just get rid of the burrs so that this thing is ready to start the assembly process. So it's really an amazing thing. We get all of our blades from sawblade.com. They are not a sponsor of ours yet, but we really do enjoy their saw blades. For around $20-25, you can get a really high quality bandsaw blade to a custom length. Well, that about does it for the bandsaw rant. So what I'm doing here is just laying out these legs. I have a template, but this is the first time that we've built this, so I'm just getting an eye for it to see what looks nice before we start the assembly. So I think we came up with this idea. This is about the time when we started to transition from a shoe rack to a coffee table. So we came up with these ideas to put our magazines or books in those side slots on the legs. So I just went ahead and put some oak boards in the front to kind of give it this rustic look, so you can see in there, and also be able to hold a book or two. So we're using pocket holes on the parts that you won't see, and for the parts that you will be able to see the holes visibly, we'll be using dowels. So we're doing a combination of pocket holes and dowels for this build, and we're also going to be using some wood glue in each joint as we assemble. Alright, so now that all the pocket holes have been drilled, it's time to start gluing up and assembling the inner layers of the coffee table. As you can see, just used an old glove there, spread some glue. Gonna put some pipe clamps on this thing, put my pocket hole screws, put some screws in those pocket holes, hold it all together, and let it set up. And then in a day or so, I'll return and start to assemble this coffee table. Now there's 3 racks on this coffee table. There's this lower one, and then there's a side that you'll see me use dowels to put together, and then there's a smaller shelf in there as well. And then we have the live edge slab, which you saw, that's going to be the top piece. But see, it can come out of the clamps now that I've got those screws holding it together, so it frees up my clamps and I can move on to the next one. But we'll give it a day or so to dry before we can start sanding it. So what I did there was just put a little bit of water on a towel, cleaned up that glue so that I don't have to do nearly as much sanding later in the project. That just saves time, and actually in the owner's instructions on the bottle it just says use warm water to remove excess glue. So I've just tried that before. If your material can handle water, and if it's not something that's extremely porous, or something that is a smaller piece that will bow or cup with some water application, then I would recommend using it. It's actually saved us quite a bit of time, and it just takes a couple seconds to rub some water on it, clean up that extra glue. So here's that smaller shelf I was telling you about. I'm going to put this together the same way as the other one, and then we'll just keep powering through this assembly. This is one of my favorite parts of the build, building that little spacer in between there. Just a lot of fun, and it's a very simple design, but it looks cool, and I just love assembling little things like this. Can't be in the shop all day without taking a break and spending time with your loved one. So as you can see here, moving on to the legs, this was a challenge for me because I'm not I've built a few things in the wood shop, but I haven't built anything that needed this much focus and attention. See, I kept running into issues on what steps to take, which board to put on, and as you can see here, it'll actually lock me out, and there's certain areas I can't even get the drill in with the bit. So it just took a little bit of thought and finagling. Anyways, I finally ended up getting it to work out well. I realized after doing this that dowels would have been the way to go. So I do see that now, and I learned a valuable lesson, which would have been just to put dowels in the lower portion, use a mallet, beat them down into one side, and then on the opposite side lay the dowels in and beat the other half of the leg on top. So I will do that next time on my next build.
Hi guys!
So we're going to be putting our stain on it. We've got a Honey 272 by Minwax. We'll start with one coat, see what it looks like. Maybe wondering about the light situation. Well, the power went out because there's this massive snowstorm. But we're going to push on, aren't we?
Yep.
Let's get to staining.
So as you saw there, we've got that Minwax. We're going to be staining this. There's a couple other products that we'll be using. For the slab tabletop, we're going to be using Osmo. It's a oil and wax combination. I put about 3 layers of that, sanding lightly with a 320 in between each coat, and it gives it a nice water-resistant seal, which has a natural wood feel to it, but definitely feels protected. And it pulls out the natural sheen in the wood. Then for the poly coat, we're going to be using a Total Boat. This is a UV protectant product. Super easy to use, no sanding in between coats, and 30 minutes to an hour dry time. And as you can see, it looks great.
Okay, so we've got the slab and the base in the house. Let's attach them. Got some 2.5-inch screws. I've got my holes that are pre-drilled down here very carefully.
Well, there it is. Finally finished it, have it assembled, and in our living room. Ready to be seated on, or I guess even drink hot coffee on top of. Whatever we choose to do with this thing, it will prove the test of time. Well, like always, we had a lot of fun with this build, and we learned a few things along the way. We'd really appreciate it if you had any comments down below. Maybe there's something you want us to try moving forward. Maybe there's something we could have done a little bit differently. We're always open to suggestions, and we love to hear what you guys have to say. If you like what you see, don't forget to give a thumbs up and hit that subscribe button to be notified when we post future videos. Thank you so much for your time and watching.